Good morning or afternoon, whenever you're watching this. I thought that we could go through some misconceptions or maybe misunderstandings from your yesterday's assignment reviewing multiplying and dividing fractions. Okay, so first going over multiplying, we'll do a whole number by a fraction by a fraction, and then mixed numbers. Okay. As this video plays, it will pause and you will have some questions to answer, so just pay attention. So multiplying a whole number by a fraction, think of cookies. When you multiply a whole number by a proper fraction, you're dividing the amount you started with. If you multiply 6 cookies by half, you're finding half of the group of cookies, which is 3. When you see a multiplication sign with fractions, think of half of 6 cookies is 6 times 1 half. Okay. So one thing that may have been unclear yesterday is actually there we go. Is actually how this looks when we're multiplying these whole numbers. I want you to remember that every whole number can be rewritten as a fraction. Okay? So we can rewrite 5 as 5 over 1. When we multiply that by 3 over 10, we can now see we can multiply straight across. So I can rewrite that as 5 times 3 over 1 times 10. Another thing that wasn't exactly clear is simplifying before you multiply. Okay? So if you rewrite these, or if you're at this stage or that stage, and you see two numbers that you know have a common multiple, 5 and 10, you can reduce those before you multiply. So we can divide each 5 and 10 by 5. I get 1 here. 1 divided by 10 is 2. So 1 times 3 is now 3. And 1 times 2 is 2. So now I no longer need to simplify. Now you can leave this as an improper fraction, or you get a proper fraction of 1 and 1 half. A mixed number, I should say. Okay? So the video is going to pause, and you guys are going to practice one or two of these again. Okay, whichever problem you got, here are your solutions. So we are going to move on now to multiplying fractions by fractions. It works the same way. You don't need common denominators. That's something really great. But remember, let's rewrite these. And look for common, or numbers with common factors. Simplify before you multiply through. It's easier to look for common factors now than it is when we multiply the numbers out. Okay? So I know I see, I can simplify 5 and 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. And 3 is a factor of 9 also. 1. 9 divided by 3 is 3. And I'm left with 1/3. But what, you may ask, maybe not, would have happened if I multiplied that first and then simplified? Well, 5 times 3 is 15. 9 times 5 is 45. Now, I'm a math teacher. I recognize that 45 is a factor of 15. Okay? But this may take you a lot. You may divide both by 5 first, and then you would get 3 over 9. And then you'd have to divide again, divide both by 5 first. I get 3 over 9. Then I have to divide again, and then I get 1/3. Okay? So simplifying before you multiply when you're multiplying fractions is a good practice to get into, but if you don't, you can still come up with a simplified answer at the end. Okay, I don't know which one, but one of these is a practice for you. Okay. All right. So here are the answers. No matter which one you got, you can go ahead and check. Notice I had to reduce here and here. Simplify this a little more after I found the solution. Okay. Let's go on to the next slide. The last one we're going to look at and review a little is mixed numbers. Okay, so again, all you have to do is convert the mixed numbers to improper fractions, then continue multiplying and simplifying as usual, okay? So I have 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11 halves, and I'm multiplying that by 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 is 7 fourths. I want to see if I can simplify before I multiply. 2 and 4 have a common factor, but they're both in the denominator. So there is no way I can simplify before I multiply. Well, I'm going to end up with a big number, 77 over 8. Now, I don't have a really good idea of what this looks like, so I am going to try to make this into a mixed number. So how many times does 8 go into 77? Well, 8 times 9 equals 72. I know that. So it's 9 whole times, because 8 times 10 is 80. But what's left? Well, 72 minus 77 minus 72 is 5. So 9 and 5/8. All right, this one you're going to practice. So video will pause. Okay, so when we looked at this problem here, we can see that we got 15 sevenths times 16 fifths. I simplified the 15 and the 5 to 1 and 3. 48 over 7. 7 times 6 is 42. So I have 6 whole. And then 48 minus 42 is 6. So 6 and 6 sevenths. So what's going to happen now is we are going to look at some word problems with this. You're going to have some work to do on that. And then we're going to review the division. Okay, we're going to start with some word problems that have whole numbers and fractions. So 1, 2, and 3 we're going to go through, kind of set up and do 1 for you, and then 2 and 3 the video will pause and you'll have to solve those on your own. So 32 cookies Erin baked. 3/8 of these she wants to take to the Girl Scout meeting, and then she wants to leave apparently 5/8 at home. That sounds like something I would do. So let's set up the problem. She has 32 cookies. That's fun. We're going to multiply by 3/8. And I'm just going to go ahead and make 32 over 1. I'm going to see if I can simplify before I multiply. And it looks like I can. 8 into 32 is 4. I hope this ends up as a whole number. Because if not, if we're bringing fractions of cookies to Girl Scout meetings, 12 over 1, which is 12 cookies. So pretty simple with whole numbers. You already know we're multiplying. So go ahead and see if you can get 2 and 3, and we'll move on to a couple with fraction by fraction multiplication. Okay, so we have 5 problems here and 6 ounces of peas for your answer for Corey. You can pause and look at the work. Next come up, we'll have fraction by fraction word problems. Okay, we're going to go straight into mixed numbers. That kind of gives us practice with any type of fraction. So for this one, Gabe is barely 2 3/5 years old. He spent 1/3 of his life sleeping or crying. How much of his short life has Gabe spent either sleeping or crying in years? So 1/3 of 2 3/5. I see of, I think multiplication, okay? So it's 1/3 times 2 3/5. So I'm going to rewrite this, converting 2 3/5 into an improper fraction. So I have 1/3 times 5 times 2 is 10, plus 3 is 13, 13/5. Lo and behold, I cannot reduce any. I cannot simplify before I multiply. 3 and 13 do not share any factors, but they are all prime numbers. 1 times 13 is 13. 3 times 5 is 15. So it's 13/15 of almost his entire life for Gabe. All right. So what I am going to do is I'm going to scroll down a little bit. You have a question about fabric. This is a multi-step question, so be very careful. Read it carefully. And then a question about Stephen. And we are going to do 3 and part A for this. So the video will pause. You're going to answer the questions, and then I will do explanations. Okay, so if we look at Emily first with her fabric. So each hat requires 1 2/7 feet of fabric. She has 3.5 hats left to make. How much more fabric does she need? So we're just multiplying these mixed numbers. So my first step, 3.5 was 7 hats. 1 2/7 is 9/7. I can see my sevens. I can simplify that because they have the common factor of 7. 9/2, so 1/2 yards. This one took a little thinking, as 10 minutes. He runs 1 2/9 miles in 10 minutes. How can he run in half an hour? Half an hour is 30 minutes, so I said he did that 3 times. 3 10-minute periods in 30 minutes, okay? So 1 2/9 is 11/9 times 3/1, 11/3. Let's reduce that, make it into a mixed number, 3 2/3 miles. Same thing, 1 hour is 60 minutes. So I just multiplied his 10-minute pace by 6. And I got 7 1/3. Okay, so we're going to quickly review dividing with fractions. If you remember from yesterday's assignment, dividing with fractions, we have one step, and then it's just the same process as multiplying fractions. We go on to slide 2 here. One thing I do want to point out is this keep change flip. You will never ever hear me say this. It doesn't really give you understanding of what's going on. If that helps you remember after the fact what's going on in division, that's fine with me. Okay? But as far as this is concerned with Miss Westerling, you will not hear me say that. What you will always hear me say is we are doing the inverse of the inverse. So when we need to go the same direction, if we turn around, we always have to turn back. Okay? So we're going to use reciprocals, which is 1 inverse. But we're still facing backwards if we only use 1 inverse. Then we change the division to multiplication, and that's my second inverse. So now we're going back the same way. So we multiply the opposite, all right? We do the opposite operation, and we use the reciprocal, which is the inverse of our fraction. Let's see this in action, okay? So these are whole numbers divided by fractions. So the first thing I'm going to do is make them both fractions, okay? And then let's invert that. So 5 over 1 multiplied by the reciprocal of this. So now we have to invert. Now we're going the same direction again. So 5 divided by a half, how many halves are in 5? Well, how many halves are in 5? It makes sense that the answer is 10. Okay, you're going to get a practice problem. I don't know which one, but I'm going to pause the video so you can do it. Okay, one of the problems I wanted to point out is this one right here, because I did simplify before I multiplied. So again, the rules here apply the same as multiplication. So I think we're just going to dive into our division word problems. Okay, so let's start out with these two examples, okay? So the first one is about Swedish fish. Back up. How much candy will each person get if 5 people share 6.5 pounds of Swedish fish? What are you starting with? Swedish fish. How much is there? 6.5 pounds. How many people are sharing? 5. So your division problem looks like the total divided by the part, okay? So we have a total of 6.5 pounds, and we're dividing it into 5. It's really important to get that correct to start off. So let's go ahead and convert 6.5 into an improper fraction. 2 times 6 is 12, plus 1 is 13 halves, divided by 5 over 1. Now let's do our magic. It's not magic. Let's do our math. So we're going to take the opposite sign and then the reciprocal. And now we can see how much each person gets. It's going to be 13/10 of a pound. Let's make that a mixed number, 1 3/10. Okay. Let's go through this process again with another word problem. And then I'm going to leave you guys to do a few practice problems. All right. Now we're looking at number 2. How many 2/3 cup servings are in 1.5 cups of cheese? So what are we sharing? Cheese. How much is there? So that's the total amount, what we have. And what's the serving size? This time the serving size is a fraction. So you have to be really careful. So how many do I need, or what size are the parts? So let's turn 1.5 into a mixed number. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. 3 halves, and we're going to divide that by 2/3. You might be tempted to simplify and multiply, but remember, we have to use the reciprocal here. So 3 halves multiplied by the reciprocal, which is 3 halves. 3 times 3 is 9. 2 times 2 is 4. Let's go ahead and make that a mixed number. So it's 2 1/4 servings. Okay. So I'm going to pause, and you can work on 3 and 4. Okay. This first problem, I think there's a typo. I think this is supposed to be 15 people, but we're going to roll with 150. And everybody gets like 1 piece of saltwater taffy. So our total was 8 3/4, 150 people attending. So I just set it up, 8 3/4 divided by 150. I did my mixed numbers. I reduced. I simplified before I multiplied. So that's 7 and 30, and I got 7 over 120. It's a crazy answer, but sometimes we get crazy answers. Don't worry about the numbers. If you're doing it correctly, your answer is probably correct. All right. The next one was a little more straightforward. 3/5 divided by 1/15, multiply by the reciprocal, and you get 9 batches of marinade. All right, last 3 problems, I believe. 6, 7, and 8. I'm going to pause the video. You're going to go ahead and do this in your Edpuzzle, and then I will show you the answers. Okay, let's look at these answers. Okay, so we've got the total divided by the serving size. So 2.5 divided by 1/3. 5/2 divided by 1/3. We go ahead, we change the division to multiplication, use the reciprocal. 5/2 times 3 over 1. We get 7 and 1/2 burgers. How many pounds of nuts? So you guys may have thought this is crazy problem, but it ends up these numbers are friendly. So I have 144 over 5. After I convert that mixed number into an improper fraction, times 9 over 1, 16 over 5 times 1 over 9. We have, oh, I just by chance said 144. Is that divisible by 9? Why, yes, it was. And I got 16/5, 3 1/5 pounds each one. How many 1 2/3 cups servings are in 15 1/4 cups salsa? 15 1/4 divided by 1 2/3. Okay, so I have to go ahead and make these improper fractions. 61 1/4 divided by 5/3. Let's multiply that across. You can't simplify anything. So we end up with 183 over 20. Okay, and 20 goes into 183 9 times with 3 as a remainder. So 9 and 3/20 servings. All right, I hope you got some good practice today. And these might be test questions. I will see you guys soon, I guess.